Welcome everybody to today's video, and today we are looking at getting you the best possible streaming PC at the best possible price. So let's get into it. Now before we get started with today's video, I'd just like to remind you to leave a like and subscribe on this video if you liked it, if you enjoyed it. Also, I stream on Twitch every Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday afternoon. Feel free to leave a follow and join me while I'm live. Now let's get to today's video. Before we get into today's video, I'd just like to clarify what a streaming PC is, so we can kind of justify why we chose certain parts over others. So a streaming PC essentially is a PC that will only be doing streaming. So it won't be doing any gaming. It will only handle the encoding of your video and sending that to your streaming site, whether that is Mixer or Twitch. Because it's not doing any other task than just encoding, you don't really need a very powerful CPU. You also don't need a very powerful GPU. You don't need a lot of RAM, and you don't need a lot of storage. Now, of course, if you're going to be recording your streams from that streaming PC, you might need to get some sort of storage for that PC just to kind of have all the files while you're streaming. And once you're done streaming, you can always just copy those off, place it on another computer, or place it on an external drive. Now, the biggest concern when getting a CPU for a streaming PC is actually knowing whether or not you use a lot of WebM files for your overlays, alerts, and transitions. Now, WebM files are very CPU intensive, and thus, if you have a lot of WebM files, so your webcam frame, your transitions, your alerts, everything kind of moving with WebM files that you uploaded, then you're going to need a much more powerful CPU compared to someone that has static alerts, static webcam frame, and just not a lot of things going on. In terms of storage, as I said, if you're going to record your streaming, you should then have some sort of decent sized storage, but you don't need 2 or 3 or 4 terabytes of storage unless you plan on storing those recordings permanently on that PC. Otherwise, just have enough storage so you can record. Once you've done recording, move those files over to another PC and save them somewhere else. When it comes to GPU, we're going to be looking at the GTX 1650 Super. The reason we're doing that is because it's this cheapest GPU currently that has a new Turing chip, which means you can stream at 1080p 60 without that GPU even reaching 50%. So that GPU is able to handle anything you throw at it. And if you don't know what that GPU is, I'll leave a link to that down in the description, also probably up here somewhere in the video. Go check that out. It's an awesome video. Let's move on to the next part. Now, with all of these, we're going to only be using an 8GB stick of RAM. The reason we're doing that, so you can just buy an extra 8GB stick of RAM if you're looking to upgrade later on when you have more money. Also, it means that you can just go and buy an extra stick if you don't want to do just the 8GB and you want to completely go to 16GB. It's just adding another one of those. Nothing major. Another thing I also won't be adding is a PC case, as PC cases are kind of personal. So the PC case I want might not be the PC case you want. And some people might want to save as much as they possibly can and go and buy a $5 PC case from someone they know, while other people would want a $1,000 PC case just because they have the money. So let's get into the first build, which is going to be Intel. Now, just before we get into the Intel build, I just want to clarify that I am currently using an i5 9400F combined with a 1650 Super as a gaming and a streaming PC, and I'm able to stream at 1080p 60 frames with the CPU only capping once or twice during a stream, depending on how many things are going off. Let's say there's 2 or 3 alerts going off at the same time, the CPU might cap. Other than that, I'm fine. For the Intel build, we're going with the i3 9100F, which we can then upgrade to the i5 9400F later on down the road once you've saved up a little bit more. If you have the money right now, I suggest just getting the i5 9400F, as that will be more than enough for any stream PC, as it will be able to run any WebM file you can put at it, and it will be able to run your streams at 1080p 60 without any issue. To pair with that, we're using the MSI Z390A Pro, which is an amazing motherboard at an amazing price. Now Z398 Pro also features an M.2 slot if you were looking to put an M.2 drive into the system. Also, it features more than one PCIe slot, which most motherboards do, but not all of them have, which you're gonna need if you're gonna be using a capture card. Now for the RAM, we're only going for one stick of 8GB RAM. This doesn't really matter all too much. You can get the cheapest you can. If you can buy it in two times 8GB to give you a total of 16 gigs, go do that. If you just want to buy the one single stick of 8GB, do that. And once you have more money, go and buy the second stick. For storage, I would suggest getting at least an SSD drive at the very least. Nobody's got time to wait for a standard hard drive to boot up. Get yourself an SSD, get yourself an M.2, whatever your budget allows, get either one of those. Don't compromise on that. For the power supply, we're using a 500 watt power supply, as that is kind of the minimum you want to look at. If you're looking at power supplies other than a 500 watt, always remember to look at least a bronze rating. If you can get anything better, that's good, but just remember, anything better than a bronze is going to add price to that. And also, you don't really need to get a fully modular power supply unit, but at least try and get a semi-modular one. The difference between those is just the semi-modular one has the fixed cables coming out, but you can add your 8 pins and your 6 pins. That will kind of neaten up everything because you don't have all of those extra cables. And a fully modular will just be you plug in whatever cables you need. There's nothing extra. You don't have to worry about untidy cables. And the GPU, of course, as I said before, is going to be the GTX 1650 Super. And that, once again, is just because it's the cheapest GPU on the market that has the Turing chip. It's got the same Turing chip as the 2080 Ti, so it can handle anything you throw at it. And once again, if you want to see a video on the GPU itself, I'll leave a link down in the description below. You can go and check that out if you want to find out more about the GPU. And now going over to the AMD build. Now with the AMD build, we're going to be using the same power supply unit and the same RAM, as that is not going to change. Also, the storage is not going to change, so it's still going to be an SSD or an M.2 depending on what you want to use. The biggest difference though is we're going to be using a Ryzen 5 2600. Now, why the Ryzen 5 2600 is because it's still relatively cheap. It's still an extremely good CPU, and it can run anything you'll ever throw at it. So with the Ryzen 5 2600, you'll never have to worry about anything. It can run any stream at any quality with any amount of WebM files. You're covered. Now for the motherboard, we're going to be using the MSI B450, as that is kind of the equivalent of the Z390 for Intel, but this one is just for the AMD. It's still relatively good priced. It is a very good motherboard, and you shouldn't have any problems with that one. So to kind of wrap up all the pricing on this, is the Intel build will be around $502, while the AMD build will be around $496. So not a big price difference between those two, as kind of the CPU and the motherboard prices just flip for both of them. With Intel, the motherboard is more expensive than the processor, and with AMD, it's the other way around. Don't ask me why, but that is how it is. Now, I know most of you are going to say, well, why didn't you just leave the GPU? The GPU is so expensive. Well, for that, I'm going to say, let's do it. Let's leave out the GPU, upgrade the CPU, and see what we can do with that. And just before we get started, don't even look at Intel. Intel is way too expensive. For you to buy an i7 or an i9, you can buy almost 2 or 3 GPUs. So it's definitely not gonna be worth it doing it for the Intel build, but we can do it for the AMD build. So instead of buying the AMD Ryzen 5, go for the Ryzen 7. Now specifically, we're going to be looking at the Ryzen 7 2700X. They're not that much more expensive than the Ryzen 5, and it's almost half the price of the GPU. Now in this case, I would say you would do this as sort of an entryway, so you can use the Ryzen 7 to encode your stream using X264 until you can afford the GPU, which you can then use to switch over to the NVENC New, which will then be able to encode anything you throw at it. Now, the reason I would still suggest getting a GPU after that is just because the CPU will still be running at a higher load if you have a lot of WebM files running. So even though you are using the CPU only for encoding, it's still going to be taking a big load from all of the WebM files you have. So rather use a GPU with a dedicated encoder to run all of your streaming and have the CPU run all of your WebM files, so all of your alerts, all of your transitions and everything runs smoothly, while the GPU worries about sending that to Twitch or Mixer at a great quality. So the Ryzen 7 build, you will then be looking at around $390 range, which means you are saving in effect $110, which you can then use to either buy more RAM, better storage, or just a better looking case. So those are the three options I would go for when looking at a cheap entry-level streaming PC. What you can also do is go around to universities, go around to old computer stores, ask them if they have old used computers. Now, if you can pick up one of those PCs with an i5 or something like that, you can just always replace the hard drive and add the GPU, and you could still be around the $400 mark as well. So if you don't have $400 or you just have around $400, get the Ryzen 7 build. The Ryzen 7 will be able to stream at 720p and 900p without relative strain on the CPU itself, and you can then use that CPU to kind of stream until you have worked up and gotten enough money to actually buy a 1650 Super. And once you've bought the 1650 Super, you can then always just stream at 1080p. Now, one thing I just want to kind of place in the world out there is don't stream at more than 720p unless you are a partner or unless you have transcoding options, which usually mean that you are a partner. And the reason for this is only people don't all have great internet. So people coming into your stream might not have fast internet. So if you're streaming at 1080p and they can't downscale that to some other form of 480p or something, they might not be able to watch your streams as their PC and their internet cannot handle watching a stream at 1080p. So just keep that in mind if you're still starting out. Rather stream at 720p at around 3,000 or 3,500 kilobits per second. That way you're making your stream more visible to more viewers, and that way helping you grow faster, getting more money faster. Getting more money means getting a better streaming PC faster, and that just means better quality all around. And that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you found it informative, or you found it fun to watch, or you found it tolerable, I guess, just leave a like and subscribe. Also, I am on Twitch every Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday afternoon. Go leave me a follow, come and hang out. We have a lot of fun over there. Hope to see you all there. And then until next time, cheers.